everyone. Welcome to the Arm Coach Podcast, episode 82. All right, my friends, today we're going to talk about something that comes up all the time, either in the back of your mind or full volume when you're staring in the mirror, pulling at the skin on your arms, or wondering if it's even worth trying again. And it's this question: can I actually change? Is it even possible for me to have different arms? Is this just what aging looks like now? Am I always going to feel like this? Will I ever follow through? Or am I just fooling myself again? These kinds of questions, they can feel brutal. They're not just passing thoughts, they dig into you. And they're way more painful than any sore muscle after a workout. Because when you're stuck wondering if change is even possible, it brings up so much shame, so much self-doubt. I know this because I used to do it too. I'd sit there and think, maybe I'm just not one of those women. Maybe I wasn't born with the right body, the right genes, the right mindset. Maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe I just don't want it enough. And I'll be honest, there were times I convinced myself I had proof. I'd try something, go all in, get a little momentum, and then I'd quit. Or life would get messy and I'd say, I'll get back to it, but I wouldn't. Or I'd do the thing just like enough to say I was trying, but not enough to really see change. Every time I slipped or stopped, it just felt like more evidence that maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe this was just how my arms were always going to look: soft, uncomfortable, hidden, something I had to work around instead of feel proud of. And honestly, I started to believe I was the problem. I thought I didn't have the willpower, that I lacked discipline, that I was too old to figure this out. If you've ever had those thoughts, maybe I can't change, maybe this is just me, the shame that comes with them, it doesn't just sting for a second. It can bury you. And shame does a couple of really sneaky things. First, it keeps you in hiding. For years, I never really admitted to anyone how much I was bothered by my arms. I didn't talk about it with friends. I didn't admit how much I hated wearing sleeveless tops. I kept it all locked up inside, convinced I should be able to figure it out on my own. That's what shame does. It convinces you that you're alone, that no one else struggles the way you do, that everyone else is fine and you're the odd one out. And when you believe that, it feels safer to just keep quiet, smile, and pretend you don't care. But here's the polarizing part: most women don't admit this. We are taught to normalize giving up on our bodies. We see our friends, our sisters, even women at the gym, and we say, well, they're aging too. Their arms aren't toned either. So maybe this is just how it is. It feels easier to shrug it off and say, who cares? I don't want to think about it. I just want to live my life. I don't want to be obsessed with how I look. But let's be real, that's not freedom. That's resignation. That's settling. That's letting yourself off the hook so you don't have to feel the sting of failing again. And when I was in that place, I'd flip it around and make other people the problem. If someone else seemed disciplined, if she had those sculpted arms, I'd roll my eyes and think, well, she's probably obsessed. She's uptight. She's the problem, not me. The truth, I was just trying to outrun my own mistakes, right? Every time I quit, every time I didn't follow through, I told myself, stop screwing up. Stop being so weak. Stop being so stupid. I thought if I could just erase those mistakes, I'd finally get it right. But here's the controversial truth: those mistakes weren't the problem. They were the key. Every skipped workout, every broken promise, every I'll start Monday moment, those weren't proof that I couldn't change. They were the very moments that held the answer. The problem was I never slowed down to actually look at them. Instead, I did what most women do. I hit the reset button. I'd say, okay, yesterday was a fail, start over, fresh slate. This time I'll be perfect. And that's the trap. This all or nothing mentality, believing you have to be flawless or else you're back at square one. That's why so many women stay stuck. That's why I stayed stuck. Because if every misstep means you're doomed, then you're right. You are screwed. So here's the thing, when you mess up, when you skip a workout, when you cave into the snacks at night, your first instinct is to usually look away, to not examine it, to tell yourself, whatever, I'll just start over. But when you turn away like that, you miss the data. That data is everything. It's literally the roadmap of how your habits are running your life. Think about it like this. If you bombed a test in school, but you never looked at the answers you got wrong, how would you ever pass the next time? You wouldn't. You just keep retaking the same test over and over, praying you'd magically pass, even though you never studied what went wrong in the first place. That's exactly what most women are doing with their bodies. They fail a week, they don't follow through, and instead of asking why, they just hit reset. Back to square one, new week, new promise, same cycle. That's why so many of you feel like you're spinning your wheels, right? You've trained yourself to think every slip up is proof that you're weak, proof you can't change, proof that something is wrong with you. And as long as you're looking at it through that lens, you'll never actually learn what's happening underneath. The truth, the controversial truth, is this: your mistakes aren't proof of failure. They're proof of a pattern, and that pattern is the key to change. But instead of studying the pattern, most women just hide. They avoid looking. They crawl under the covers of shame and say, let's not think about it. I'll just try harder next time. And I get it. I used to do that too. Or if I did look, it was only to beat myself up. I'd say, see, you skipped again. You're lazy. You'll never follow through. But that's not learning. That's judgment. And judgment never builds muscle, physically or mentally. What actually creates change is curiosity, stopping long enough to ask, what was I thinking in that moment? What was I feeling before I bailed? What story was I telling myself that made it feel easier to quit? That's the real work. And yes, it feels uncomfortable at first because you've been conditioned to pile shame on top instead. But once you start getting curious instead of judgmental, you finally have the information you need to build a different path forward. That's why I teach something really simple: a check in with yourself, not a punishment, not a lecture, just a check in, because every single choice leaves a trail of clues. And if you learn how to read those clues, your body and your arms will start changing faster than you thought possible. Here's the thing: I believe every single woman can change her body, no matter her age, no matter her history, no matter how many times she's quit before. I don't care if you're 55, 65, or 75. I don't care if you've fallen off track 100 times. You can change. But here's the simple check-in I want you to use with yourself. Right now, in this moment, do you feel mostly hopeful that change is possible or mostly doubtful? Now notice I said mostly, not 100%, because this is where so many women get it wrong. You're not supposed to feel perfectly confident. That's not realistic. Doubt is normal. The question is, which way are you leaning? Are you leaning into hope or are you leaning into doubt? For years, I lived on the doubtful side. Not just leaning, I was swimming in it. I'd think, I've tried too many times. I'm too old. My skin's too loose. My arms will never look different. I'll always be the one hiding under sweaters. And if you're in that place, let me tell you, the worst thing you can do is try to outrun your doubt by proving yourself wrong. That's what diet culture teaches you, right? Prove it. White knuckle your way through 30 days. Restrict harder, train harder, show yourself you can be perfect. But that strategy backfires every single time. Why? Because the second you slip up, and you will, you use it as evidence to confirm your worst fear. See, I knew I couldn't do this. Something's wrong with me. That cycle keeps women stuck for decades. Here's the truth. Your doubts aren't a sign that you're broken. They're a sign that you haven't examined the real obstacle. Because embedded in those doubts is the roadmap for change. When a woman tells me, I doubt I can tone my arms because I've tried so many programs and none of them worked, what that actually shows me is her perfectionistic mindset. She thinks the only way to win is to never mess up. When another one says, I doubt I can do this because I lose motivation every night after dinner, that tells me it's not about motivation at all. It's about how her brain has linked relaxing with eating. Or when someone says, I doubt this will work for me because I still want the comfort of food. That shows me she's never learned how to sit with an urge without answering it. The doubts themselves are the clues. They're not the enemy. They're the evidence you need to understand what's really keeping you stuck. So instead of pretending the doubts don't exist or shaming yourself for having them, what if you got curious? What if, instead of using them as proof you can't change, you started treating them like your roadmap to change? So here's what I want you to think about. Maybe the thing keeping you stuck isn't your body. Maybe it's not your age, your hormones, or your metabolism. Maybe the real thing holding you back is this. Every time you make a mistake, you abandon yourself. Maybe it's that perfectionist mindset whispering, if you're not perfect, why even bother? Maybe it's using food to cover that restless, lonely feeling at night because you don't have another way to deal with it yet. Maybe it's the story you've told yourself for decades that you just don't have discipline. But here's the truth. None of that means you can't change. It just means you've been looking in the wrong place. That simple check-in, am I mostly hopeful or mostly doubtful, can save you from falling into black and white thinking. You don't need to erase every doubt. You don't need to prove yourself with a perfect streak. What you need is to see where you're leaning and ask, what is this doubt showing me about the habit underneath? That's where the real power is, because your doubts aren't proof that you're broken. They're a mirror reflecting exactly what needs attention. And this is where I'll get a little polarizing. Most women waste decades chasing diets, workouts, and quick fixes because they're scared to look in that mirror. They'd rather start over on Monday for the thousandth time than face the discomfort of curiosity. That's why they stay stuck. That's why their arms stay soft and hidden. But that doesn't have to be you. You can decide right now that you're done with perfectionism, done with the all or nothing game, done with starting over. You can choose to use your doubts as data, to actually learn from every slip instead of letting it define you. That's how you change. That's how you stop hiding. That's how you create arms and a life you're proud of. So this week, come back to this question again and again. Am I mostly hopeful or mostly doubtful? And if the answer is doubtful, don't run. Get curious because your doubt isn't a dead end, it's the doorway. Most women will keep spinning in doubt forever, but you don't have to. If you're ready to break the cycle and build the mindset of a naturally toned woman, grab my arm and mindset bundle. You'll get my top 5 courses on indecision, self discipline, deprivation, habits, and doing hard things for one low price. This is the foundation for arms you're proud to show off. So the link's in the show notes if you want to grab it, and I will see you all next week.